and Charlie Kirk was a pretty prominent conservative, and I thought Charlie Kirk he'd be an interesting character to kind of kick the conversation off with because he kind of represented something that Dr. Claude Anderson talks about in his book Powernomics. He talks about the Charlie Kirks of the world, also in Black Labor, White Wealth, in terms of people that would make assumptions about Black people being incompetent. If you remember, Charlie Kirk made a lot of statements before he passed. Again, I'm not happy that he passed. I'm not happy about anybody getting hurt. But during his life, he was very much known for making pretty critical comments about Black people and Black people not being qualified for certain jobs, things like that. And I'd be curious to see what a conversation between a Charlie Kirk and a Dr. Claude Anderson would be, given that that individuals like Kirk were the ones who would kind of deny that Black people are owed anything. They would sort of say that reparations is something that only lazy people beg for, just stuff that it just isn't true. And what is also true, which is really interesting, is that there have been conversations on the right wing about things like self-reliance and economic strength and stability of a community, strong families, that Charlie Kirk did speak about as well, that Dr. Anderson agrees with, right? So it's a really interesting sort of paradox where in some areas where you would think that Dr. Anderson would have nothing to do with or any sort of affiliation with a conservative, they might have actually pretty good common ground. And then other areas where they would just go head to head, right, in competition. And in fact, actually, a lot of people don't know this, but I remember when I spoke to Kanye West once, I remember he told me that he gave Powernomics to one of the members of the Trump administration, his nephew or whatever, son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And when he gave Powernomics to Jared Kushner, he said that Jared he read Powernomics from cover to cover, and he didn't just read it. He actually was highlighting sections of the book, and he was, I think apparently because Jared is his background's finances, he was really intrigued with the fact that there's a segment of the Black community that's really embraced economic independence as a pathway to liberation, which really speaks to the fact that conservatism versus liberalism isn't just about black and white. It's never been just black and white. It's always been liberal conservative. We have people that try to make it black and white, right? You'll have conservatives that'll say you should be one of us because the liberals are racist. And then black people are like, yeah, they are kind of racist. We got people down in Chicago in Democrat run districts and nobody's doing anything about it. But then the liberals will say, well, you got to be one of us because the conservatives are racist. And we'll say, yeah, they are racist. I mean, that thing that they said about black people being unqualified and all this other stuff that they're doing, that's pretty racist. But really, at the end of the day, I would almost say that I think it's really important to understand the importance of having a black first philosophy. So what I want to do, as you guys know, in Powernomics training, we read Dr. Claude Anderson books every week. We've been doing this consistently week by week for about 7 years now, 7 years, and we're going to keep on doing it, hopefully for another 70 years. I'm not going to stop. Black liberation should never sleep. Black excellence does not die. Black education should never have an end point. And so So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off actually pointing out some things about this Charlie Kirk situation that link to Black history and actually link to Powernomics in particular, and really what we're actually dealing with, right? So a question a Black person can ask is, considering, and first of all, let's just start the beginning. Give me a yes if you agree with me that it wasn't cool for him to get shot. Like, can we start there? I want to start there by just proclaiming that we're going to be decent people. I'm not here to, I just, it doesn't make me comfortable. If you're here to sit and dance on his grave and stuff, this might not be the place for you. So give me a yes if we can at least like remind ourselves that we are good people and Black people have always been decent human beings. Like as a culture, we've never been into the violence. We've never been into just killing people, starving people, doing these horrible things. So let's just start there, right? So I hope we can start with a spirit of decency, because I think our consciousness should remain elevated where we're not running around getting involved in gangster shit. Like I don't want us running around saying like, yeah, that's why you got shot, and I hope it happens to your mama. I don't. That's not who we are, right? That's never been who we are. Okay, so thank you for that. So with that said, let's have an honest conversation about this because this really ties into what we've been training on with Powernomics. And I'm actually going to read some history out of Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Dirty Little Secrets, that will connect the dots in terms of helping us understand why what we saw today with Charlie Kirk being killed in broad daylight, not by a black person, by the way, not by a black person, that has this kind of thing has happened for a long time. And in fact, we'll talk more specifically about the death of Abraham Lincoln, another time where one white guy kills another white guy, and black people are kind of in the backdrop, right? Like we're kind of we ain't got nothing. We're like we ain't got nothing to do with y'all. With what the hell y'all doing? That all that white on white crime. We had nothing to do with this, but we're part of the conversation. Do you see what I mean? Like with Lincoln's death, we weren't involved, but we were part of the conversation, and it becomes a debate. Like, well, okay, well, what was Lincoln fighting for? What did he die for? Did he die because he was trying to free the slaves? No, he didn't. He didn't die for the slaves. He died because of what was going on in the Union and the conflict. Really, you think about it, the inevitable, ongoing, never-ending gang affiliation between liberals and conservatives. I mean, that wasn't nothing but gangster shit. That was their version of the Crips and Bloods, that Hatfields and McCoys. That's what that was. John Wilkes Booth, uh, more on the right wing. Abraham Lincoln, more on the left wing. And in this case, the right wing guy got the upper hand, but with Charlie Kirk, it's the other way around. So with that said, let me just lay out some connections here that you may not have thought about. One thing about Kirk was he spent a lot of his time arguing against affirmative action and reparations, which are ideological counterpoints to a lot of powernomics. Um, and this is where the conservative is not the friend of intelligent black people, because intelligent black people know how much was stolen from us, and what is owed. Like in fact, let's just do a quick poll. Give me a yes in the chat if you agree that black people deserve reparations. How many of you agree that reparations is something that we're owed? In fact, I'm gonna call this the reparations poll. I'm gonna do a quick poll, and this is for the ghost of Charlie Kirk. Maybe he's listening, because I do believe in the afterlife. Let me stop. That sounded mean. I was trying to make fun of it, but whatever. All right. So I'm gonna ask you: do you believe in reparations? Okay. See somebody in there laughing. Don't be laughing. You ain't supposed to laugh. See, but I made the joke. See that was just see that I just say stuff and I just don't be thinking. All right. So anyway, let me let me go in and just run the poll. I'm gonna be quiet before I say something else stupid. All right. So I'm gonna run this poll, and here we go. I'm launching the poll right now. If you're inside the Zoom, you'll see the poll. If you're not in the Zoom, then just put a yes or no in the chat. Yes, if you agree that reparations are owed, a no if you don't. And here's what I'm looking for. You know what I'm looking for? I'm not looking to see what the answer is. You know what the answer is. Come on, y'all black up in here. I'm looking to see if we can get more than 2% of you. Sorry, more than 1% of you in this room to say that we don't deserve reparations. I'm looking for one person, then I'm looking for 1%. So everybody answer that sees the poll, everybody inside the Zoom. If you're not inside the Zoom, just text the word greatness to the number 87948, and I'll send you a link next time to join the Zoom. Okay, I'm looking. Okay, I'm gonna close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, go. Check this out. Look at that. 100% of you. Not one single person in this room said that you disagree with reparations. Every single one of you said that. Now, mind you, I want you to understand what that means. I'm not Roland Martin. Nothing against Roland. I'm not Roland Martin. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not right wing. I'm not a Republican. I've made this point many times. I have Democrats in this room. I have Republicans in this room. We have independents in this room. We have people that don't vote in this room. And not one of you in this room, forget 1%. 1% is a really high bar compared to, I was looking for just one. Not one of you said that we don't deserve reparations. So when I see a poll like that, what that tells me is that America is a divided country. So maybe one person said no in the chat. I don't know. I'm looking in the comments. It looks like one person said no, but process that. Thousands of you said yes. One person says no. The one Negro who's probably just in here trolling anyway. He's probably a white guy with a black mask on right now or something. I don't know. Maybe he's doing a Drewski Too Funny skit and putting on blackface. Only one of you said that we didn't deserve reparations. So what I'm saying to you is that this speaks to how divided the country is because a lot of you are black conservatives. I know that for a fact because I talk to y'all. And I go out of my way to make sure people don't think that because you're a conservative that you're not welcome here, or because you're liberal you're not welcome here. I'm gonna piss everybody off equally, and I'm gonna make everybody happy. Like you're gonna love one thing I say, you're gonna hate the next thing because I want to be black first. That's what I want. I'm tired of us cloaking our blackness in these freaking political parties and falling for the okie doke. If you don't vote for me, then you ain't black. How dare you say that? My blackness is not contingent upon whether or not I serve you, sir. What the hell are you talking about? So with Charlie Kirk, his consistent criticism of affirmative action and reparations makes it very difficult for him to maintain allegiances and alliances with African American people, even those on the right wing, because even the most conservative Negroes tend to know that we've been screwed. The only ones who act like they don't know it are either really stupid or they're really paid off. They've been paid off. They always find a crazy Uncle Ruckus out there somewhere. But even conservative black people, I find so in fact, I know conservative black people who are the blackest people I know. And because they're sick and tired of waiting on the liberals, they believe in doing for self, they believe in building solid families, they don't believe in wasting time and nonsense, and they just happen to believe that being conservative is the best pathway to get there. So Charlie Kirk, by speaking against affirmative action and against reparations, I don't understand that from a strategic standpoint, because then at that point you're just being a white man. At that point, you're just being another bigot. You're literally acting and it's a really conflicted sort of analysis because on one hand you're talking all this stuff about accountability, but on the other hand you ain't taking no accountability, right? Do you get what I'm saying? Like it's that selective accountability. Well, we want you to be accountable for what's going on in your communities and your families and blah blah blah, but we're not taking accountability at all for the horrible shit that we've done in this country to other people and the amount of money that we owe because of it and the wealth that we have because we stole it directly from other people and all that can be proven. You can't be my friend if you speak that way. That's why black first is, in my view, the right approach. Democrat, Republican, I can't support that. I see that as a primitive mindset. I see that as it's not me belittling you or I'm not making fun of you, but I understand it because I used to be that way. I used to think, well, if I want to be pro-black, I got to be a Democrat. And then I was like, well, wait, the Democrats don't seem pro-black. When I bring a real problem to them, they're not trying to solve it. So that's not pro-black. Pro-black means being pro-black. Pro-black does not mean being pro-Democrat. They're making the white man your middleman. No one else, the other man should not be the middleman for you to get to your community, man. Those are bars. Like the white man should not be the middleman for you to get to your community, man. You should go straight to your community directly, no chaser. Stop going through political parties. Do the work yourself. Number two, Kirk talks a lot about he talked a lot about free market capitalism as the best tool for everybody, right? Including Black Americans. Um, and he also, according to my notes here, he talked about the system sort of, well, he talked about the marginalization a little bit of Black people, but not much, because he sort of seemed to believe that America was supposed to be this meritocracy and that free markets were going to solve all the problems. And so ultimately, um, he was a capitalist. I'm not a capitalist, and his belief in a meritocracy was somewhat flawed because he would speak about DEI and how it benefited Black people in particular, but he didn't talk about all the preferences, all the race-based preferences that work in favor of white men, right? Another area, he did run a group called Turning Point USA, where he built networks of students around the country. He became very powerful because of that. And so, in my view, what he was doing with Turning Point USA is not just a turning point. I think it's a learning point in the sense that I think that the Powernomics philosophy that Dr. Claude Anderson laid out should also be a framework that we're also making sure our young people understand, right? Like I think that the same way a Charlie Kirk might go to different campuses and set up different branches and spaces where people are learning how to be the next generation of conservatives. I think that we should have spaces where our young people are being trained on how to be the next generation of Black leaders, Black institution builders, heads of Black families, and heads of Black communities. Somebody asked me a question in class today in our stock options class, and they said, is 9 years old too young to come to the All Black National Convention? And I said, no, 9 years old is not too young. 0 years old is not too young. You want to embrace your kids. You want to make sure that they get introduced to the ideologies that are going to empower your community. And I'm not mad at Charlie Kirk for trying to do that. I would never get mad at another man for trying to make sure that his people are good. I think that that's okay. I think it's okay for him to love white people because I love Black people, and that's okay as well. Um, he talked a lot about self-reliance in the form of individualism and personal responsibility. But again, I think that individualism and personal responsibility becomes the favorite tactic for white America when things are easy. But if you recall, during the 2007 stock market crash, when the whole economy was about to be pushed off a cliff, suddenly all this individualism and self-determination went out the window as they were begging for a government bailout. So your president, Barack Obama, comes into office, and the first thing that he's asked to do by Congress, or that first thing he asked Congress to do actually, is to give $700 billion to the banks. They could have spent the 700 billion helping people pay their mortgages. They could have took the 700 billion and said we're going to help homeless people. They could have said, hey, this is a down payment on reparations. Right? They could have done a whole lot with the 700 billion, but they didn't. They gave a bailout, and they didn't just bail out regular people. They bailed out the richest people in America. And so what my challenge would be to conservatives, and I have the same challenge for liberals, is the reason I can't be a liberal or conservative is because I see hypocrisy everywhere. You like individualism when it benefits you, but then you want collectivism when you're in trouble and you need help. And I think that that was unfortunately a part of Charlie Kirk's legacy that to me undermined the fact that I ultimately have to be quite honest to say I think he was a smart person. I think he's smart. Ben Shapiro's another prominent conservative. He and I used to have the same publicist. I thought Ben was smart. Candace Owens, I think Candace Owens is actually smart. If you let your emotions go to the side and listen to her, you'll actually see her intelligence. She is not a stupid lady. But the problem happens, and I think Candace broke away from some of this, to be honest with you. The problem happens, though, is when you're committed to pledging allegiance to a political party, your words become gang affiliated. Like you're sort of required, you become almost corporate. You're required to repeat the company's talking points, right? That's it. You can't have independent thoughts at that point. If all the conservatives say bow to Israel, then you got to go bow to Israel. If all the liberals say that Trump is a racist, there's no amount of evidence you can ever get that will make you believe that he might not be a racist. It's so hilarious to me that when they showed the hypocrisy, because somebody was like, they had a video that said we're going to expose all of Trump's racist moments, and they literally showed like 80 pictures of him with Black people, from Jesse Jackson to every rapper in the world, to kissing a old black lady on the hand, to having his arm around a bunch of Black kids, sitting at a table with a bunch of Black pastors. Now, does that make him a good man? No. Does it make him pro-Black? No, it doesn't. But what it does, all it does is it jumps the very low bar of proving that, like, no, this man ain't no card carrying, pitchfork having Klansman that wants to cut your balls off. He's more nuanced than that. He's a rich man from New York who has a specific set of values. And if you align with his values, then you are his friend. He probably likes white men more than everyone else because he is one of them. But still, there are many Black people who I know personally who say, yeah, Donald Trump was very nice to me. Judge Joe Brown says it all the time. What was it? The sister, Angelique Stanton King says it all the time. There's a long list of people that will say, no, 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 this guy he came through for me. He listened to me. And so what I'm saying to you is I'd encourage all intelligent people in the room. Let's do a little quick exercise. Give me a yes if you consider yourself to be a thinker. How many of you are thinkers in here? And it's not going to be everybody. Most people, only probably 20, 30% of the population really likes to think. How many of you consider yourselves thinkers? Okay. If you're a thinker, I'm just going to ask you to consider not aligning yourself with political extremism because extremism is not designed to teach you how to think. Extremism is designed to get you to fit into a box. And then when you get in the box, you become a slave. You become stuck. You're not free to say, maybe that is a good idea. Maybe I'm a Republican, but maybe it's okay. Maybe abortion is okay sometimes, or whatever, or I'm a liberal, and maybe maybe the conservatives are right about abortion on this particular issue, right? Like the nuance. But we lose the nuance, and then when you lose the nuance and you go to extremism, then you get violence and you get chaos, you get people screaming at each other, and it's not fun. I don't want to live my life where I'm screaming at other people. If you start screaming, I'm not going to talk. You got a lot to say, so I'm gonna just let you get it out. But we're not having a conversation at that point. We're not building a nation. We're creating we're really getting ghetto. And America has become ghetto. Like America's just ghetto right now. All right, so let me read some of this to you. I'm gonna read from page 168 of Dr. Claude Anderson's book, Dirty Little Secrets. His website is powernomics.com. If you want to get copies of his book, I encourage you to go to powernomics.com. And this is all about Abraham Lincoln and how Lincoln didn't really free the slaves. And this to me is it makes me think about what happened today with Charlie Kirk because you're talking about a scenario with a liberal and a conservative that ended in violence. And black people were always in the picture. Like we're so funny. Like it's like in the American Family picture, you got the liberal that's like sitting up here, and the conservative that's in the front row, and black people are in the back. Like we're always somewhere in the picture, but we ain't never really the middle of the picture. Like slavery, like the Civil War wasn't really fought on behalf of black people, but we were kind of like affected by it, right? We became pawns when Lincoln freed the slaves. It's like I'm going to free your Negroes to punish you, right? And he didn't have the power. I'm going to read about this and give you the facts on it for Dr. Anderson. But same thing is true now. Like so with Charlie Kirk, it's one angry white liberal. I assume he's a liberal if he shot, but then maybe he's not. Maybe he's just crazy. But you got one black white guy kills another white guy, and right when Charlie Kirk has his life taken, unfortunately, which was horrible to watch, he literally right before it happened, the last did anybody else see the last words that came out of his mouth? How many of y'all saw the last? Did anybody see it? If you have the stomach for it, the video's interesting. The last words out of his mouth were something like gang violence. Did anybody else catch that? Like literally, he says gang violence, and then those were the last words that came out of his mouth. And here's the thing. I agree. If he was saying gang violence is bad, I say absolutely. But sometimes you have to when you have this sort of dog whistle language, like gang violence, like this is America's biggest problem. Well, if you're going to talk about gang violence and gun violence, then you got to talk about all of it. You got to talk about the gang violence with police forces. The police department's a gang. You got to talk about gang violence in terms of what's happening with the Israelis and the Palestinians. The America and Israel, they're kind of a gang, and Israel's the gang leader. They're telling us what to do. If you're going to really talk about violence in America, you got to go deep on that, man. America is a horribly violent country. When I sat with Minister Farrakhan, it was one of the greatest conversations I ever had. We sat alone for 2 hours talking. No, I'll never forget it. I'll never forget when he said that he said, Dr. Watkins, and you know how he speaks. Like you can't talk like Farrakhan. I'm not even gonna try to, but he said, Dr. Watkins, America has more guns than people. And I remember saying, I said, man, that's crazy. And I went and looked at the history of America when it comes to guns. We've had two things America loves is guns and liquor. That's why, like literally 150 years ago, Americans used to drink like I forgot how many gallons of whiskey every year. We love drinking and shooting. That's just we're just like we're kind of Americans, and I'm not even talking about black people, but America in general, we kind of were sort of like the niggas of the earth. Like not us. I'm talking about them. I ain't really talking about us. But in terms of just real ghetto behavior, liquor, guns, shooting people, going and beating countries up, taking their stuff, that we got the best weapons, best military, so we'll go beat you up and take your oil or whatever. And the rest of the world looks at us like, what's wrong with these uncivilized savages? and they got the most money too. Like, so because we work hard and all this stuff, and we'll fight if we want something, we'll go take it. So to some extent, there's honor there and being able to fight and defend yourself, but there's also the dishonor of being known as kind of a bully. So America has an interesting history, and I don't think it's something that Black people had anything to do with. But it also teaches me a lot in terms of knowing what we're dealing with. You're not dealing with, you don't have no allies over here. You don't. I like going to Africa because I feel like I do have some allies there. I have some people that actually want to see me, that are happy to see me, that want to partner with me. I don't think you have a lot of allies in America, liberal or conservative. But here's what Dr. Anderson says about Lincoln. This chapter is called Lincoln Did Not Free the Slaves. Page 168, Dirty Little Secrets, he says, historical facts suggest President Lincoln was everything but the great emancipator of black slaves. During the earlier years of the Civil War, President Lincoln publicly claimed that he would not and could not free black slaves. Do y'all know that? He even acknowledged that the Civil War was not about black people, but about national unity. Lincoln was not passive in his support of slavery, even when the Union commanders issued orders freeing slaves in captured Confederate territory. Lincoln blocked such orders at least twice. Did y'all know that? How many of y'all knew that? I want you to sit on that while I grab my water. I'm going to read it again. Lincoln was not passive in his support of slavery, even when Union commanders issued orders freeing slaves in captured Confederate territory. So they ordered the slaves to be freed in captured Confederate territory. Lincoln blocked such orders at least twice. If he freed the slaves, why was he not willing to free the slaves when other people wanted to free the slaves? Y'all to answer, riddle me that while I grab my water. But y'all want to believe in fairy tales. It's like Santa Claus. Let's keep going. Thank you, Dr. Anderson, for telling us the truth. He says Lincoln's position was strengthened by the U.S. Congress in 1861 when it passed and referred to the states in an amendment to the Constitution that guaranteed that Congress would never abolish black slavery in America. So the Congress in 1861, they passed and referred to the states an amendment to the Constitution. They were going to put it in the Constitution that Congress would never abolish black slavery in America. And Lincoln sat there and said, way to go, my nigga. That's what he said. Because that now white people get to be niggas. He said, way to go, my niggas. He said, Lincoln literally said that he supported this. Like, he didn't stand up and say, by golly, that's not appropriate. He said, we support this. Isn't that interesting? Let's keep going. Few Northern politicians had any interest in freeing black slaves. So these are your allies, by the way. That's the North. These are your allies. You've got allies. Hallelujah. Few Northern politicians had any interest in freeing black slaves. They were concerned about breaking the wealth and political power base of the South. So the Northern politicians wasn't nobody trying to free you. You were just a lucky, fortunate. Your freedom was a consequence of their inability to remain united. I mean, I want you to think about that, how crazy that is. That if they had just been able to get along, Rodney King style, we might still be slaves. Isn't that interesting? And isn't that an interesting learning point to explain what's gained and what's lost when you break the band apart? We talk about that in class a lot. When you stay unified, when New Edition broke apart, they were all losing money because everybody was a solo act and nobody was winning. When Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones broke apart, the Dallas Cowboys were no longer winning. When Phil Jackson cut ways with Michael Jordan and the crew, the Bulls ain't won a championship since. And so when you break the group apart, you lose wealth. So they lost wealth because they couldn't stay unified. Thank God they didn't. I mean, it worked to our benefit. But I want you to think about that with your family. I want you to think about the next time you argue with your brother, your sister, your wife, or your friend. When you break the group apart, you always lose wealth. This is economic theory. This is in textbooks. I can prove this to you mathematically. This is a mathematical fact. When you are unified as a group and you have a collective and institution, you gain power, which leads to various forms of wealth. And so, but when you're chopping people off and you're cutting everything and everyone out of your life, when you're not willing to apologize or work out things with the people that are your natural teammates, you lose. So America lost because they got into this ghetto behavior and couldn't pull out of it. Let's keep going. Most politicians knew that Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation was a sham. Lincoln was president of the Union only. He could not and did not free black slaves. The Emancipation Proclamation spoke gloriously about freeing slaves in the Deep South, over which the Union had no authority. Yet it ignored blacks in the border states, over which Lincoln did have authority. Oh, did you catch that? How many of y'all did y'all hear what I just said? It ignored blacks in the border states over which Lincoln did have authority. So they were willing to theoretically free slaves in the spaces that they did not have authority, but they did not actually free the slaves that lived in the places where they did have authority. Isn't that interesting? So the black people you really could free, you didn't free those. But you would free the other ones that you couldn't free. You would free them on a piece of paper. Do you get what I'm saying? Does everybody get that subtle point? Okay, so let's keep going. The attitude of Lincoln and his administration was succinctly put in Lincoln's letter of December 22nd, 1860, to Alexander Stephen, soon to become vice president of the Confederacy. Quote, do the people of the South really entertain fears that a Republican administration would, directly or indirectly, interfere with the slave or with them about the slaves? If they do, I wish to assure you, as once a friend and still I hope not an enemy, that there is no more danger in this respect than it was in the days of Washington. Let's read that again. So the attitude of Lincoln and his administration was succinctly put in Lincoln's letter of December 22nd, 1860 to Alexander Stephen. So Lincoln was writing to Alexander Stephen, who was going to be the vice president of the Confederacy, not the Union, the Confederacy, the South. Okay, so let's read this again so we can see what's being said here. Lincoln is saying to Stephen, okay, he says, do the people of the South really entertain fears? Like, are you really afraid that a Republican administration would directly or indirectly interfere with the slave? So he's basically saying to his homie, his Southern homie, do you think that we're going to take your slaves? You follow me? Let me know if you're following me. I want to make sure everybody understands this. Do you have fears that a Republican administration would directly or indirectly interfere with the slave or with them about the slaves? And then he says, if they do, so if you are afraid we're going to mess with your slaves, he says, I wish to assure you, as once a friend and still I hope not an enemy. So I used to be your homie. Now we're not homies no more, right? But I ain't mad at you. Used to be my home. Wait, remember the Tupac had that song? I ain't mad at you. All right. So I wish to assure you, as once a friend and still I hope not an enemy, that there is no more danger in this respect than it was in the days of Washington. So did y'all get what he's saying there? He's saying that the odds of us taking your slaves are as high as they were when Washington was president. We ain't gonna mess with your Negroes, man. Just come back home and you can keep all the slaves you want. Does this to you sound like the Great Emancipator? Is there a reason why Howard, some of y'all might have went to Howard University. If you work there or know someone who works there, send them this video and I need you to ask them why you have that big ass mural of Abraham Lincoln on the side of that building. I need somebody to spray paint over that thing, please, because it bothers me. I love Howard, but that mural just don't make no damn sense. It doesn't show education. Unfortunately, it shows a lack of education, but I know Howard's the greatest educational institution, so I need to do a little bit better. Let's keep going. Even the British press regarded the Emancipation Proclamation as sheer hypocrisy. The Times of London sarcastically remarked that Lincoln considered himself a sort of moral American pope. Where he has no power, Mr. Lincoln will set Negroes free. Where he retains power, he will consider them slaves. So the Negroes that were under his authority, He said, I'm not letting y'all go, but the ones over there, I'm gonna let them go. It really takes me back. It's almost like um okay, I'm trying to process what that really means. Maybe it's like pimping, right? Like I got my hoes, I got my Negroes over here that I control, and you got your hoes, and I want your hoes to be liberated from you, and I'm going to convince them that you're a terrible person. So I need, your hoes, we're going to make them run away. We're going to take your hoes from you. And then someone says, well, are you trying to free all the hoes? Is that what you're the liberator of hoes? And I say, no, I'm not letting my hoes go. I want his hoes to go so that his hoes will become my hoes. I hope that that wasn't too crass. That's out of the Mac. It makes you think about that scene with Goldie the Mac, Goldie the pimp, and he says something like, "Your bitch chose me." Right? Remember that? Right? So in a way, and forgive me for being too direct. I just have to share the analogy that comes to mind. But that's what it's kind of saying. It's saying, I want to free your slaves, not because I care about your slaves, but because I'm trying to hurt you by taking away your source of power. So hopefully that source of power will become mine. And that is exactly how American politics works today. That is exactly what happens today. That does sound like claymation voice, doesn't it? But literally, that's exactly what politics does today. I listen to a Democrat and they say, come with us because the Republicans are racist and you don't want to be a Republican. You want to come be with us because the Republicans are bad and terrible. And we're like, oh, they racist. Okay, okay, daddy, all right. And so we run over to Pretty Tony. But then we hear the Republicans. They say, well, no, come over with us because the Democrats, look at what they're doing to you. Look at how bad they treat you. Look at what they said. Did you hear what Biden said about black people? Come over here. We're like, okay, Trump, okay, Mr. Trump. And that's what we do. And which really, if you think about this, right? So you got pimp number one, the Democratic pimp and the Republican pimp, and then we're the little prostitutes, just kind of tapping back and forth in our mini skirts, trying to figure out which pimp we want to get with, and who. What at the end of the day, I think the question is like, and I know I'm being silly, but the big question is like, who really cares about us? I mean, the problem is not. See, here's the thing. This is I like this analogy works actually. It's not the fault of the Democrats or the Republicans that we get caught in this weird love triangle. It's really our fault. This is not a political issue. This is a self-esteem issue. It's a self-esteem issue because if I really love myself, I'm going to say, well, neither one of y'all treat me well. I'm not going with either one of you. I pledge allegiance to nobody but myself or other people who are in the same condition as me because nothing that you're doing is motivated by your genuine concern for my well-being. When you say Black Lives Matter, you really don't mean it. You're using it as a rallying point to get power for yourself. So self-love, I think, is really the key to all of this. I think if you love yourself, like so you think about the slaves, we know that the slaves in the North should have known, and many of them did know, that if they go to the North or to the South, they're not going to get love anywhere. So what did you have? You actually had black people who were smart like this. This week, I spent several days in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where you had a bunch of former slaves who said, "To hell with your nonsense. We're not gonna get involved with none of your BS because y'all crazy. Y'all are ghetto. You're primitive. You're behaving like a bunch of damn apes right now. We're not fans of any of this behavior. We're gonna go over here. We're gonna just love each other, love on each other, and build for ourselves." So we're not the first black first community ever. They were black first. They said, so we're gonna, in fact, they weren't just black first, they were just human, they got to be human beings. They got to say, look, I'm not the black carpenter, I'm just the carpenter. I'm not the black school teacher, the one black school teacher in the school. I'm one of many black school teachers, but we're all black, so being black doesn't matter. Now what matters is how good of a teacher you are, right? I am the guy who's baking the bread. I'm not the black guy baking the bread anymore, right? So I really think that philosophy, that's your power base. That's the key. That's what liberates you. So check this out. This is another one. This is called The Great Emancipator's Sick Joke. This is on page 169 of the book Dirty Little Secrets by Dr. Claude Anderson. So here's what he says. He says, there's an old adage that whatever a man jokes about is what he truly feels in his heart. If there is any truth in this saying, it speaks poorly for President Abraham Lincoln. After Elijah Lovejoy, an anti-slavery editor, had been killed by pro-slavery forces, so this violence, this Charlie Kirk violence has been something that's happened in America for a long time. So Elijah Lovejoy, an anti-slavery editor, had been killed by pro-slavery forces. Lincoln made a joke about his death. In a speech in Worcester, Massachusetts, he said, quote, "I have heard you have abolitionists here. We have a few in Illinois, and we shot one the other day." That was his joke. The crowd roared with laughter, but on the serious side, many of Lincoln's formal statements revealed he held no love for blacks, free or enslaved. That's what Dr. Anderson says. This next section says Douglas attacked by a mob. During the Civil War, free blacks did not have the right to assemble and protest, even in the North. So even in the North, black people unifying and coming together was a very dangerous thing. So even in the North, they didn't like it. On December 3rd, 1861, a pro-slavery white mob attacked a black rally in Boston organized by black activist Frederick Douglass. In honor and memory, so Douglass had gathered black people in honor and memory of abolitionist John Brown. Brown had been executed by the federal government for his raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia, attempting to seize weapons and free black slaves. Rather than protecting Douglass and his supporters from the white mob, the local police joined the attacking mob and broke up the rally. So even the police were attacking the black people. And this didn't happen in Alabama. This happened in Boston, not Boston, Boston. If you know anything about Boston, you know that the folks in Boston, they don't love no niggas. They have no love for black people in Boston, right? We know the history there. Blacks were excluded from Civil War Grand Military Review. This is what the next section is called. On May 23rd, 1865, in Washington, D.C., the Union Army celebrated its Civil War victory over the South with the largest parade in the nation's history. It was called the Grand Review. Attending this historical occasion was President Andrew Johnson, Edwin Stanton, the Secretary of War, and all of the top military officers, including Ulysses S. Grant, William T. Sherman, and Charles Wainwright. Thousands of spectators gathered to watch a massive parade of all the Union troops in service at the end of the Civil War, with one exception. Okay? The more than 200,000 black soldiers and sailors were not recognized. The black Union regiments, some of which had fought substantially longer than the white units on parade, the white units that were being paraded, were intentionally excluded from the victory parade. The Philadelphia Inquirer explained their absence, saying, quote, "They, the blacks, can afford to wait. Their time will come," end quote. The few blacks who did march in the parade were made to appear ridiculous. They paraded as the Pick and Shovel Brigade to provide comic relief. For example, two large black soldiers dressed in colors rode small mules so that their feet dragged the ground. They drew laughter from President Johnson and the crowd. In the grand parade, neither the former black slaves nor free soldiers were to be depicted as heroes. Their exclusion signaled a clear message about the kind of union the white veterans felt they had preserved. With the South back in the Union, white soldiers being honored, and black ex-slaves providing the entertainment, the Grand Review was the visual embodiment of a reunited America. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? So Nellie Moore says I got the accent from Boston correct. So maybe I get in my car and drive to Boston. You know, I lived in Boston, when I was a sophomore in college, and it was so long ago. It was the summer that the movie Boys in the Hood came out, and I went to a Chinese restaurant, and the guy was giving me my food, and he goes, "You want some Dak sauce?" And I said, "What?" He said, "Dak sauce." I was like, "What the hell is Dak sauce?" And the guy goes, "It's duck sauce." The accent is crazy. Right? So, like Dak Prescott, like, what are you talking? What is Dak sauce? Oh my God. So anyway, so let me get serious though. So what this last section was saying is that black soldiers who fought in this war, were not honored the way the white soldiers were, and that just breaks my heart because war is hell. I know a lot of you are veterans, and you have dedicated your life to serving and protecting the country, and I just honor you so much, and I appreciate you. I just wanted to make sure. I hope everybody can say thank you to the veterans that are in here. I know you may not agree with the politics of what's happening with the wars and everything, but you know, the soldiers, first off, I just honor you completely, and I hope everyone will share their honor in the chat. But also, I will say that your black veterans are really important to the mission of black people. Vincent's the U.S. Marine Corps. All right, well, thank you. I'm gonna give you. It's not a full. I don't know how to do the whole salute, but you get that, brother. So thank you so much for your service. Every time if I see a soldier anywhere, if I'm in line at a store and a soldier's in front of me, I'll buy his food or whatever. Because I have so much respect for this, right? Like there's really an honor in people willing to fight and die for what they believe in, even if they believe in something different from me. I respect that immensely. And soldiers and veterans are a really important part of the Black liberation struggle. Your role is essentially important because you have a specific mindset that embodies courage, that embodies discipline, that also embodies strategy, and also embodies execution, right? So when Black Wall Street gets built, soldiers are part of that. In fact, that is what happened. That's why the Black Wall Street massacre was so difficult for them to do because those men were not sitting around waiting to get shot. Oh, they got their guns. They said, "Oh, we got guns too." They just didn't have as many guns, right, as the other side did. But these were fighters, right? So your soldiers and your veterans are a really important part of the liberation struggle, and I just want to make sure we understand that. So I hope everybody will join me in just giving respect to our veterans. You know, my father was in Vietnam, and there's the price that he paid for Vietnam was so great. I can't even talk about it. You know, the only greater price he could have paid was death, but actually death would have been better for him based on what he had to deal with once he came home. So anyway, let me keep reading here. All right, so here's another one. Ex-slaves entered politics. Although a number of blacks became elected officials in high offices within 5 years of slavery, their political presence was deceiving in terms of their power, responsibilities, and the effect that they had on the quality of life for blacks. So a number of blacks became elected officials in high office, and so their political rise did not correlate with a rise in the outcomes for the black community. Surprise, surprise. So this has been going on for a long time. He says that black politicians, the problem was they lacked a critical mass, influence, and respect. Even though blacks were the dominant population in a number of southern states, none were ever elected governor. Fewer than a dozen served in Congress. Most were in state legislatures and held minor local offices such as constable, sheriff, and postal worker. Black elected officials were unable to compete with white officials because they lacked education, they were poor, and they were politically unsophisticated. The social political climate also kept them in their place. The majority of black elected officials came from the ranks of slaves who had been house servants or artisans, not field hands. Consequently, mulatto politicians were disproportionately numerous. Shout out to Barack Obama. And as a group, provided more conservative, non-threatening leadership for the race. Again, shout out to Barack Obama. He was a liberal, but he was a conservative liberal. In fact, it's really interesting. Even little things like if you talk about things like deportation, I don't know if y'all know, Obama deported a whole lot more people than Trump, from what I understand. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me double check that. Let me make sure I got that stat right. But and I'm not saying that you should agree or disagree with the deportations. I'm just stating the fact here. But let me see here. How many people? Let me ask. How many people Obama deported? Um, I believe, and so y'all can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but I believe actually Obama was I think they call him the deporter in chief. Let me see if I get this right here. Okay, so for Obama's record, okay, Obama deported far more people than Trump. He deported 3.2 million plus what they call voluntary returns. That's people who just chose to leave because they just knew he was coming. Trump's numbers were significantly lower, especially in his first term, and his second term is still unfolding. So Obama deported 3.2 million. And again, I'm not telling you that I agree or disagree with deportation. I want to be clear on that. You can have your own opinion on that. I'm just giving you information. Obama deported 3.2 million formal removals from 2009 to 2016. When including voluntary returns, that number jumps to about 5.24 million. For Trump, his first term, he deported roughly 1 to 2.1 million. The more precise figure suggests just under a million formal deportations. His second term, his administration claims that 140,000 people were deported by April of 2025. Isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? That's so strange, right? So it's not deportation that you hate. It's Trump. So if you hate deportation, it's because you hate the guy doing it. It's not that you hate deportation, period. But another thing that is true, I think, is a lot of the people being deported tend to be black and brown from Mexico or black countries, right? They don't deport a lot of Ukrainians and stuff like that, right? And Italians. All right, so let's see here. All right, so check this out. This is another interesting Abraham Lincoln factoid that you probably did not learn in school. Abraham Lincoln was growing increasingly sensitive to and fearful of the divisive and explosive issue of slavery. Early in the first term of his presidency, Lincoln offered reparations to slaveholders. Did y'all hear that? Tell me if you heard that. Lincoln offered reparations to slaveholders, not to the slaves, slaveholders. So early in the first term of his presidency, Lincoln offered reparations to Southern slaveholders. Lincoln devised a scheme to free the slaves gradually over a period of some 30 years. So his plan was to let the slaves go over a 30-year period and give reparations, compensation to the slaveholders. This is your beloved hero, the great liberator. He would offer reparations to the Southern slaveholders and pay them for their losses out of the national treasury. So they were going to dig into the national treasury to make sure that the slaveholders were compensated for losing their Negroes. But never once has anybody seriously considered going to the treasury to actually pay the slaves. This is huge. This is big. This speaks to the perception of the black man and the black woman in America. You're not perceived as a full human being, you're perceived as a commodity. And this is not just something of the past, this is something that still happens to this day. That's why the majority of black people are not business owners and wealth builders. You are employees and you are your debtors and your workers and your consumers. You are a commodity unless you become something else. So part of the reason this is a self-esteem exercise is because I need you to see yourself as something other than just someone else's commodity. If all you do is you see yourself as someone's employee, you see yourself as a consumer of a product and never the producer, you see yourself as the borrower and never the lender or the investor, then you're going to always be stuck in that little loop. So with this thing with Lincoln, Lincoln was like, look, I mean, why would I pay the Negro? Why would I pay people? Why would I pay black people? They're not people. I'm going to pay the owners of those people. And so he was going out of his way to pay the slaveholders for their losses. And his plan, his wonderful plan, just like politicians now, when we talk about reparations, they don't say we're going to pay reparations. They say we're going to study reparations. We're going to think about reparations. So his plan was like, we're going to think about slavery. We're going to study whether or not we can free black people. And it was a 30-year plan. So that means if you're, 30, you would get out by your 60th birthday, I guess. He would offer reparations to the slaveholders and pay them for their losses out of the national treasury. To carry out this plan, he needed the approval of Congress to pay Southern slaveholders nearly $500 million, only a portion of their $7 billion investment. This was an unimaginable amount of money for that period in history, so they were going to go deep. So I don't know what, I'd be curious to know how much $500 million. Let me see here. So how much would $500 million in 1861 be in 2025 dollars? Let's see. I don't know. Let's find this out. Let's see how much your government doesn't care about black people, but does care about those who were owners of black people. Um, $500 million adjusted to 2025 dollars would be about $17.9 billion. So you imagine the U.S. government saying, we'll spend 17, 18 billion dollars on something, and they would do that for people who were arguably the most evil people in America. the most horrible people. I mean, if you owned slaves, you were a terrible person. So let's keep going. The federal government could not afford to compensate slaveholders to release their slaves. All the capital investments in the North, South, and the West together would not have been enough to cover the cost of reparations to Southern slaveholders. Northern industrialists were another glitch. They were not interested in compensating Southern slaveholders for their investments. They and Northern politicians would not support reparations because they wanted to reduce the South's plutocratic control of the national government. The proposed reparations plan for slaveholders exceeded the total federal budget of $50 million. So they were going to spend 10 times the federal budget to like compensate these slaveholders, and they won't give y'all a nickel. Um, it was more than the total federal budget of 50 million and all the businesses in America combined. Of course, it never happened. Congress denied the president's request. So he was willing to really go to bat for slaveholders, but wasn't going to bat for slaves. So there's your real history in Abraham Lincoln. He was not the great emancipator. And I think that just circling back on what happened with Charlie Kirk, which was highly unfortunate, I do not celebrate this. I do not condone this at all. Um, it really speaks to the fact that this sort of violence is nothing new, and it ain't got nothing to do with you. And I think that if you focus on you and focus on yours and focus on your people and become your best self, you can do some pretty awesome and amazing things in America. But also, I think this speaks to the need to connect to Africa because there may come a point where America gets so crazy that you're going to have to leave, right? You get your passport to Ghana or some other country, and you at least have the ability to go live somewhere else just in case America starts to fall. We know America's falling. We know America's headed to hell in a handbasket. The amount of division of this country can't be maintained. You've got an anti-American, anti-Western axis and alliance being built between China, Russia, and North Korea and India right now. That's very alarming to security experts. You have a country that's failing economically because we have politicians that are not financially responsible on any level. They're going to eventually ruin this economy. And so I think having that ability to leave America and leave for good is going to be a skill that your kids and your grandkids are going to need to have. So I would encourage you, if you have the means to do that, pack your bags, take a trip to Africa, get your kids used to going to other countries. If you do that, then I think they're a little bit safer that way, and then you can build in other places in case America and when America falls. And the best part about Africa is that in the next century, Africa is going to be the richest continent on the planet because Africa has the most young people. Where would I go? I like Ghana a whole lot. I'm part Nigerian. Shout out to Nigeria, but my country, Nigeria. I say my country because I'm 40% Nigerian. We got to deal with the corruption. The corruption. Nigeria is not the first African country you should visit, in my opinion. You should go somewhere that's a little milder and then work your way up to Nigeria. Nigeria is a place that requires some adjusting. I'll say that. Every place does though, right? But Nigerians are super smart, hardworking, intelligent, capable people. I don't know a lot of Nigerian families that don't have successful people in them. So there's a lot of great culture in my Nigerian community. I say we because I got that DNA thing. There's something special about being Nigerian. But also South Africa. I know I wanted to go to do the trip to Ethiopia next year, and the company we were going to travel with, they can't do that trip. So if I can't find another company that we can go to Ethiopia with, we'll probably do South Africa. But I'll let you guys know when I take a trip. So make sure you're on the text list. If you want to travel with us as a group, you can text the word travel to the number 87948. So text travel to 87948, and we can do that. Also, one thing I want to mention to you all, just to plant the seed, is I spoke to Dr. Lene Javette today in New York, and she pitched a great idea of us doing a men's wealth conference, that we should do something that would allow men to come together and to connect and fellowship and grow and build and reclaim who we're supposed to be, and to bring in male experts from different walks of life, and just really make ourselves into the great human beings that we're supposed to be. So I'm going to do that. I'm really ashamed that we haven't done it sooner, but that is going to happen. So when that happens, I will let you all know about it so that you can attend. I'll give you plenty of notice, and I'd love for you to participate in that. And you can bring your sons and multi-generational power and wealth building. I just think Black men, I think we are so amazing. We're so extraordinary. We're so unbelievably strong when we focus. And I just want the strongest of the strong and the most capable and the most responsible, the most intelligent to help lead the way and just go out here and really compete with the world, right? So that's what we're going to do. And I'll let you guys know. And if you have a son or nephew or uncle that you want to sponsor to come out, then that would be cool also. We love everybody and want to do something special. So that's something I'll let you guys know about that. All right. So anyway, I'm gonna get on out of here, guys. Please have a good night and thank you guys for listening. And don't forget if you want to be notified when we meet for a class once a week. We do this every Wednesday, Powernomics training. Just text the word greatness to the number 87948. So text greatness to 87948 on your phone, and you'll get the information from me to join class. All right. Have a good day, everybody. God bless you. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.